afternoon, everyone. I'm proud to be joined by Senator Murray and Senator Carper. Now, this week in the Rules Committee, our Republican colleagues are trying to move forward with a partisan proposal to ram through President Trump's nominees at even a faster rate. This push comes in the midst of yet another example of the Trump administration's failure to adequately and properly vet their nominees. Mitch McConnell said it's the job of the administration to vet the nominees. Well, they're doing a pretty poor job. And let's just look at Admiral Jackson. There are already all sorts of allegations about Admiral Jackson, and there's a lot of discussion that maybe his nominee should be withdrawn. It's pretty easy to guess that he wasn't thoroughly vetted. You might even speculate, I wasn't there, so I don't know if this is true, that they were in the room together and President Trump, in his usual quick way, said, "Why don't you become Secretary of Veterans Affairs?" and off he went. But this isn't once. Time and time again, we have seen nominees inadequately vetted. And you'll hear from Senator Murray and Senator Carper about a few of those. So our Republican colleagues bemoan the pace of the nominations, but we see with the administration's quick, sloppy vetting process that the Senate to vet nominees is more important than ever before. Just let's look at the cabinet. It lies in shambles just 15 months into the Trump presidency. President Trump's on his second HHS secretary after his first resigned in disgrace for ethical problems. He's seeking confirmation of his Secretary of State after he fired the first one. His nominee for Labor Secretary withdrew after troubling ethical issues. His EPA administrator is under siege for blatant corruption. His nominee for CIA Director faces serious questions from both sides of the aisle about her previous nomination, her previous engagement in torture. And now the second nominee for Veterans Affairs is on the rocks, simply because the Trump administration didn't adequately vet him. The cabinet is turning into a sad game of musical chairs, and the American people are losing out. The administration has repeatedly named nominees and asked questions later. We are proud of our role in thoroughly vetting the nominees because the administration isn't. Senator Langford's proposal is misguided. It is wrong. It couldn't be put forward at a worse possible time. This week has shown that the President's nominees deserve scrutiny, not automatic confirmation. Senator Murray.
Thank you, Leader Schumer. One of the most important constitutional roles that we have here in the Senate is to advise and consent on presidential nominees, to scrutinize them and make sure they are qualified for the job. We'll put the public and public interests ahead of special interests, and that they don't have ethical challenges or financial issues or other concerns. Now, this doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything they would do, of course not, but it means there is a certain level of scrutiny we owe it to our constituents to apply and to protect. This should be pretty basic work here in the Senate, but it is more important now than ever before. We have a president and an administration that has made it very clear they aren't as concerned with ethical lapses as most people across the country are. We have nominees and secretaries that have had to step aside due to ethical lapses and concerns. And as was recently reported, the office in charge of vetting nominees and other personnel, the Presidential Personnel Office, is in, quote, chaos and is, quote, plagued by inexperience. So Democrats have made it very clear. We're not going to allow nominees to be jammed through without proper scrutiny and debate. No cutting corners, no playing fast and loose with the facts, and no cutting off debate. That's wrong, and we will not stand for it. Now, hopefully, the events of the last 24 hours have made it very clear why this is so important. When this country sends men and women into war, we have an obligation to care for them long after they return. Critical to fulfilling that promise is a strong VA led by a highly qualified VA secretary who is free from ethical conflicts. We know that the millions of veterans who get their care through the VA know that as well. Yet President Trump, who paid a whole lot of lip service to veterans while he was out in the campaign trail, either didn't care or didn't bother to take the time to ensure he was sending over a fully vetted nominee, a nominee who wouldn't force Republican and Democratic members of our Veterans Affairs Committee to hit pause on the whole process one day before a confirmation hearing. It is sloppy, it's disrespectful to our veterans, and it's wrong. But while I'm deeply frustrated by the Trump administration's sloppiness, I have faith in the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, who's ready to dig into this, conduct the proper oversight and scrutiny that is needed to assure that this nominee is up to the task. And I am hopeful that we can get the facts we need, debate them as appropriate, and do our jobs as senators free from any political attempts to jam this nominee or any nominee through. So I hope Republican leaders are looking at this and taking it as a lesson. It's on us here in the Senate to do the hard work to ensure the American people, especially our veterans, are getting the leadership they deserve. Republican leaders are today talking about finding ways to rush this process and cut corners. They should be talking about ways to do this thoroughly and right. Someone has to do the work on behalf of our American families and the ones we represent. And if the past year and a half is any indication, it's certainly not going to be President Trump or his administration who's doing that. Thank you.
Senator Carper.
Thank you, Leader. Delaware is the first state. Before anyone else ratified the Constitution, December 7, 1787, we did. I like to say that Delaware for one whole week was the entire United States of America. We opened up things, led in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, and others. I think it's turned out pretty well for the most part until now. And the folks up in Philadelphia, when they were working on the Constitution that we ratified on December 7, 1787, they disagreed on a lot of things. They weren't sure how women should be treated, how slaves should be treated. They weren't sure if there should be one branch of the government, two, three branches of the government. Should there be a bicameral legislature, unicameral legislature? Are we going to have judges? If so, how are they going to be selected, nominated, confirmed, and so forth? One thing they absolutely agreed on, every one of them, they did not want a king. They did not want a king. They put in place this intricate system of checks and balances that we have now lived with for some 240 years. Churchill described democracy as the worst form of government devised by wit of man, except for all the rest. This is a hard way to govern. This is a hard way to govern. I served as governor in Delaware for 8 years, from 1993 to 2001. Made many nominations for cabinet positions, judicial positions, and other. Every one was confirmed. We had a Republican House, a Democratic Senate. They were all confirmed. And the reason why is we vetted the men and women we nominated, because the legislature did their job in vetting as well. This administration does not vet well. Otherwise, we would not have Scott Pruitt submitted as the head of EPA. He was a pitch well telegraphed. You only have to go back to his tenure as Attorney General of that state, as a state legislator in that state. There's a great layout, extensive article in the New York Times just a couple of days ago that just lays out what kind of person he is, the kind of ethical quality he brings, and the kind of misdeeds that he's capable of doing, even long before he was nominated. Long before he was nominated. We should not be surprised with what we're seeing literally coming up every day. He should never have been nominated, should never have been confirmed. He shouldn't be serving today. And the sooner that he returns to Oklahoma. In fact, I said I was thinking of buying an airline ticket, one way, Washington, D.C. to Oklahoma, not first class coach. More I think about it, I think I'll buy a train ticket for him. Send him back home where he came from, and hopefully we'll get a more worthy candidate. This administration has submitted the names of a number of good people that have been confirmed. I'm just going to mention a half dozen or so of them. Sonny Perdue, Secretary of Agriculture. Jim Mattis, Secretary of Defense. John Kelly was unanimously confirmed, I believe, as Secretary of Homeland Security. Robert Lighthizer, our trade rep, Nikki Haley, UN. There are any number of them. They do their job, vet candidates, make sure they're not just capable, intellectually capable of doing the job, but morally capable as well. They'll get confirmed. Last thing, P.S. Several years ago, Senator Schumer, I think working with Lamar, I want to say it was Lamar Alexander, yes, they actually reviewed all kinds of positions for which there was a presidential nomination and came up with some, I thought, very good ideas of how we could streamline that process. And there's no reason why we shouldn't or couldn't revisit that and improve on the work that they had done. That makes a whole lot more sense than what's been suggested to us by James Lankford. P.S. James Lankford, I know him well, served with him on the Homeland Security Committee. I think he's an excellent senator and a very good human being. And this is not a well thought out proposal. I think we can do better than that and better than this, and I hope that we will.
Thank you, Senator Carper. Senator Murray, questions?
Republicans say the Democrats are just making up reasons to oppose Mike Pompeo, and that it's important that the Senate make a big show of support for the Secretary of State nominee. Do you agree with that?
Well, let me tell you, I'm going to oppose the nomination of Secretary Pompeo. I haven't said anything till today. I met with him several times while he was a CIA director. We had very good discussions. I was pleasantly surprised that he seemed to take a stronger stand on Russia and sanctions than the president did. Then I saw him, we talked foreign policy when he was nominated, and I said I'm going to wait and hear his hearing. I was disappointed in his hearing, so I asked for a second meeting. We did not talk any foreign policy issues. I asked him two things. I said, first, to me, even more important than the great decisions that a Secretary of State has to make is rule of law in America. Would he be willing, since there don't seem to be many in the administration, to speak out publicly and forcefully that the President should not fire Mueller or Rosenstein? He demurred. Second, I said, now that you're Secretary of State, you're in a different position. Would you walk back some of the really nasty comments that he has made about Muslim Americans or people from South Asia? He demurred. I am voting no for those reasons, and I think people have good reasons to vote no for Secretary Pompeo, both on the foreign policy sphere and in these areas.
Do you think that Romney Jackson should be brought into consideration for the judiciary and
Well, there are so many allegations, most of which have not been made public yet, but are very serious. I'll wait to see if those are corroborated. But clearly, this nominee was not vetted. He doesn't. My initial reaction was that he doesn't seem qualified to run a large agency, but I was willing to wait and hear the hearings. But the new allegations are much more serious than that. We'll see if they're true. I don't know if they are, and that's why I'd withhold directly answering your question. Well, I'd like to look at his proposal. I think we should do everything we can to get people jobs, and I'd look at his proposal. I haven't studied it yet.
Leader Schumer, what is the right balance between what the vetting should be by the administration on any nominee and then the advice and consent that the Senate provides on someone? We keep hearing mixed things from what, whether it's in shambles out at the White House, whether the Senate is doing its job up here. What is that balance? Well,
the balance is that you have to err on the side of caution. Our Republican colleagues, let me give you one example. There's a nominee that was just filled on the circuit court, and this was from Wisconsin. That seat was vacant for 7 years because Ron Johnson withheld his blue slip. 7 years. Now they're complaining that we want 30 hours when they nominate someone else. It smacks to me of a double standard.
This is the third one of these 2-year budget deals that we've had. And in the second year, everybody says, by God, we're going to get that appropriations process up and running, and it's always failed. So why is this year going to be different?
Because I think the bipartisan agreement set a very good tone, and the fact that Leader McConnell has publicly said that he will not go for rescissions has also increased the ability of us to work together. And so this afternoon, actually, Senator McConnell and myself, Senator Leahy, and Senator Shelby are meeting, and I think all four of us have a great desire to start doing regular order on appropriations processes. If we can do that in the way that we've outlined in the past, 50-50 on defense, which was set by the CAPS deal, no poison pill riders, and bipartisan committee when things come to the floor, we might have a good chance to do it this year. I'm more optimistic than I've been in the past. I would say that Senator Langford's proposal does cast a sour note because it seems so partisan. And, you know, I didn't hear 3 words when Senator Langford spoke on the floor. Blue slip, 60 votes, Merrick Garland. Seems history is only partially remembered. Yes.
Are you willing to agree to some changes in the rules on dealing with appropriations bills? Do you think it would be moved quickly?
I don't think.
So you don't have to go through all this culture.
Yeah. No, we don't need a rules change. We just have to get some comity here, and that's what our meeting's all about. Last one.
If Republicans bring the ambassador to Germany nomination to the floor, will Democrats filibuster?
Well, we'll have to see if they bring it to the floor. I haven't talked to my caucus about this. Any one member can block, as you know. Okay? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Nice job.